ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Shots with Soldiers. This is our last event, our last little episode for 2022. And we're doing this one obviously right before the Christmas and holiday season here. And so we won't get an opportunity to say thank you and show our appreciation and make sure we remember those who serve our nation on now until 2023 after we finish this one. So welcome. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you to those who are going to watch this later. Shots with Soldiers is just our very small attempt to say thank you, to show our appreciation, and to remember those who've served Canada, those who've served the 38 million Canadians who live in this great nation and call it our home and live here and work here and raise our families here. We want to say thanks to those men and women who served in the uniform of the Canadian Armed Forces, Canada's sons and daughters, and thank them for their service to all of us from the time that Canada was first started, first thought of, first came into being, right through until now. And to say not only thank you to them, but thank you for the service that they will bring in the days and weeks here to follow. And so Shots with Soldiers is really simple. I'm going to talk about, in this case tonight, two soldiers, and I use soldiers in the most generic way. I'm talking about soldiers and sailors and aviators and special forces troopers. But I'm also talking about the families of those soldiers and aviators and sailors and special forces troopers, those 350,000 to 400,000 family members across Canada and the world who stood beside us during our darkest hours. We also remember them, appreciate their service, and thank you to them with this Shots with Soldiers. Shots with Soldiers, the title, really, really simple. Throughout history, those who've gone into battle have also often been fortified with some alcoholic beverage to give them that warm feeling in the pit of a cold belly, to maybe give them that little extra liquid courage from time to time. During World War I, perhaps more than any other time, it became sort of formatted, and oftentimes before going over the top, the dark rum or whatever alcohol was available would come around to the soldiers in the trenches waiting to scale that trench and expose themselves to murderous machine gun fire and razor wire and artillery fire and snipers as they went forward to try and take an enemy out. And they would take a shot from that rum or that alcohol, and maybe it would just give them enough courage, give them enough warmth to survive what was going to happen in the next few minutes, in the next several hours. Of course, soldiers being soldiers, young men in most cases back in those days, sometimes somebody didn't want the alcohol, so other soldiers had more than one shot. And there are certainly cases where soldiers went over the top with a belly full of rum and did some incredible things during that time frame. We take the term Shots with a Soldier, and what we'll do at the end of this small episode is we'll have a toast to those soldiers that we talk about, toast to our soldiers in general, and we'll toast them and thereby remember them and thank them and show our appreciation. The shot does not have to be alcoholic. I'm not pushing alcohol whatsoever. And each time I try to use something special. Tonight, I'm using a wooden cup as my my device here, my portico to drink and to have my shot with. It was given to me by the Finnish contingent when I was down in Bosnia in 1994, 1995. And this is the first time I've ever had a drink from it. I thought tonight would be appropriate time. And the drink I have is actually appropriate for the season. It's eggnog. And so that's what I'm going to use to toast our soldiers with tonight. There are four things I want to do as quickly as possible, different from night to day, from white school to black memories apart here. Number one is to every single veteran who sees this and listens to it, to every member of your family out there, I just want to say a Merry Christmas to you and a Happy New Year, and wish you all the best for 2023. And whether you're deployed around the world outside of Canada, you're on a ship at sea, or aircraft that are deploying around, or if you're on special forces tasks around the world where we don't even know where you are, or whether you're with Hawk Reassurance in Latvia, providing reassurance to that flank of NATO that if Russia does get ideas about doing more than what they're trying to do in Ukraine, NATO is going to be there, led by Canadians, to stop them, or whether you're serving on Artemis in the Middle East, either in Kuwait or in Iraq itself, as so many are, helping stabilize that part of the world and therefore make Canada even stronger because of stability elsewhere, or whether you're part of Op Unifier training Ukrainian soldiers, either in the United Kingdom with other allies and friends, or in Poland itself, and perhaps other nations around Europe, or if you're on missions across the Middle East, across Africa, or anywhere else around the world, I just want to say Merry Christmas to you. Thank you so much for your service to Canada. This great nation did not become great without the service and the sacrifice of people like you, and we thank you for it. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you and your families who are back here at home waiting for you to return, and oftentimes spending Christmas alone. And to those who are deployed, I would simply say this: once you've made the determination that you are going to be away from home for Christmas, yeah, it's a difficult time, because that is a time for family. It is a very emotional time. But once you've made that determination that you're away from home and you're going to spend it with your battle brothers and sisters on a mission far away, it actually becomes one of the most enjoyable and impactful events and times you'll ever have in your entire life. I've done it many times, whether it's Bosnia, Croatia, or Afghanistan, or other places. And once you've made that determination that you are away from home and you cannot change that, and you've set your family up for success, it can be one of the most incredible experiences that you will ever have. And I wish you a Merry Christmas. I wish you a safe Christmas, and I wish you a happy 2023. That's part number one. Part number two is very different. I just want to make a point here because I'm pissed. I'm not drunk, I'm just angry. And I'm angry because of the stories reverberating around Canada about MAID, or medically assisted death, and about the potential that some of our veterans who have been looking to caseworkers in Veterans Affairs Canada have been advised that maybe they should consider assisted suicide, and that rather than committing suicide themselves, perhaps they should look at medically assisted dying. And when I hear that, I don't know any of the scale and scope and magnitude. I don't know what occurred. I don't know if it's one worker misguided, or were there more, and therefore there was a culture of this. I know those things are being investigated, and hopefully we'll find out the detail and set it right, but it does make me angry. But I put that anger aside and I say to every single veteran who hears this, through the struggles that you have gone through as you've served our country, the battles that you have fought, the operations that you have completed, the years of service that you are given, every single thing that you have done, as you have been supported by your families, either close, intimate families, or the more extended families, or the families of your battle brothers and sisters. Every single thing that you have done has made you stronger. And any battle that you face now, whether it's for physical health, whether it's for mental health, whether it's for support to transition into civilian life and carry on and do things the right way, no matter how tough that battle is, no matter how difficult the challenges that you may face, no matter how dark the days may be in front of you, you can win. You fought tougher battles than this, and you're not going to let that get you down. And nobody in Veterans Affairs Canada or any other part of the government of Canada has any right, any privilege, or any prerogative of advising you or anyone else, of all of the veterans out there, to look at assisted suicide as a way of getting through your challenge. And it makes me angry when that occurs. And I simply say to you, your life is precious. You fought tougher battles. No matter how difficult it is now, you'll get through it. And you know something, if you're having challenges that you cannot feel that you will succeed at conquering by yourself, reach out to those battle brothers and sisters, that band of veterans that surrounded you. Reach out to your family, talk to your friends, and don't be in it alone. You weren't in the military when you were there. You were part of a great team. You still are now as a veteran. And if somebody, and I'm going to say this no matter the language, and I apologize in advance for it, if somebody in an interview with a caseworker or something comes up and says to you, you should consider assisted suicide, tell them to fuck right off. Okay? You're not going to go down that road. Your life is far too valuable. You fought tougher battles, and you're going to fight this one and win. I'm going to end right there and say, God bless you. I love every single veteran that I've ever met. It's been absolutely incredible. You're our sons and daughters of Canada, and it's been a real pleasure to have served with you. And I leave that last message with you because I feel so strongly about it. The third thing I want to do is just have a shot and just say thank you, show my appreciation to a soldier who's going through a real tough time now, having come right out of point number 2 to this one. And that's Lieutenant Colonel retired William Mark Roberts, or Mark Roberts as he's more commonly known. Mark Roberts is going through the last fight of his life right now, and he knows that. He's well aware of it. He's been moved to the Elizabeth Bruyere Hospital here in Ottawa, and he's been superbly looked after, taken care of by his family close at hand. His sister had reached out to me and let me know that Mark was going through this tough and last fight. And I had the opportunity about 2 weeks ago to go down and visit him at the Elizabeth Bruyere Hospital. Mark is very proud of his service, 36 years service in the uniform of the Royal Canadian Air Force, 36 years service to Canada and to Canadians. He was a logistician, a transporter kind of guy. He did 4 tours at Trenton, making sure that we got to missions around the world. And then when we got to those missions, making sure we were resupplied, making sure we were recovered from those missions at the end of our tours, and making sure that when things went wrong, as they did in places like Afghanistan, but every single other mission also, then the necessary support was there from the Royal Canadian Air Force, orchestrated by Mark to make sure that his boys and girls were looked after like no other. Mark was very proud of his service, as I mentioned. He described as somebody who's completely focused on expeditionary operations, and he knew that when young men and women deploy around the world, and they're 12,000 kilometers from home, and they're on a dirty, dusty, dangerous trail, and somebody is trying to kill them, that maybe the only link that they have back to Canada and the support that they get from Canadians is the link that's provided by Lieutenant Colonel retired Mark Roberts, Royal Canadian Air Force, member of military merit. So to Mark Roberts, if you happen to see this, we say thank you for your service. We appreciate incredibly your sacrifice. His blazer is in his room with the medals on it. There's a picture in his room with the Governor General of Canada, Michael Jean, investing him in the Order of Military Merit. In the background of that picture is a brand new Chief of Defense Staff, General Rick Hillier. And I just want to say it was my privilege to have the opportunity to cross tracks with you numerous times in your career and to be able to talk to you this past several weeks. And we salute you, Lieutenant Colonel retired Mark Roberts. You're an incredible Canadian and we love you dearly. The last thing I'm going to do here, and I'll try not to take too long on it, but it's a little bit difficult to not take a few moments. And that's to do a shot for Chief Warrant Officer, RSM, retired John Barnes, who's on the episode with us here tonight. John Barnes is this incredible soldier. I had the opportunity to meet him numerous times throughout my career, our paths crossed, in part because of Petawawa, and where he served, where I served several times, in part because of missions around the world, including specifically in Afghanistan. John Barnes joined the Canadian Forces in 1981 from the south part of the Avalon Peninsula of Newfoundland, not quite down to Cape St. Mary's, but really close down in that area. And he became one of literally tens of thousands of Newfoundlanders who over the past decades and century have joined the Canadian Armed Forces, the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, the Special Forces, to serve Canada and to look at a life different from what they would find back in the great province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I mentioned Cape St. Mary's because if you're a Newfoundlander, and John Barnes knows this, and if there are any other Newfoundlanders on there, when you hear that wonderful song, that sea song, Let Me Fish Off Cape St. Mary's, your heart is just dragged back to the great province of Newfoundland and Labrador and the incredible people there that deliver such sons as John Barnes. John joined in 1981, did his basic training at Cornwallis and went off to join his regiment, the Royal Canadian Regiment. He went to the 1st Battalion, and the 1st Battalion in those days, and probably nobody else on the podcast would remember this except myself and John, the 1st Battalion in those days was actually in London, Ontario. And it wasn't until the summer of 1991 that they actually moved to Petawawa, Ontario, where they presently are a part of 2 Brigade. They served in London, Ontario. He went there, completed his training with them, and learned his skills, learned his job, learned his duties as an infantry soldier, of which he excelled. Big strapping guy. If you see John Barnes here on the podcast, you'll see exactly that, who learned his trade well and became just an outstanding soldier. Shortly after his training, shortly after service with the 1st Battalion, he was posted to Germany, to Baden-Baden, to join the 3rd Battalion of Royal Canadian Regiment, served there until 1984, and then with the entire battalion, which was one of the first unit rotations that we had done since way back in the 60s, with the entire battalion of the 3rd Battalion of Royal Canadian Regiment, he rotated to Winnipeg, Manitoba, and the battalion was replaced in Baden-Baden by the 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricia's. John served in Winnipeg a variety of positions, rising through the ranks, did what we would call the combat leaders course or the infantry section commanders course during that time frame in Wainwright, Alberta. Again, learned his trade, learned the broader aspects of that trade, and learned a whole bunch about leadership. Back to Germany in 1988 with the 3rd Battalion again, who replaced the 2nd Patricias there and moved back into Baden-Baden, and was there, of course, and became a part of the Canadian expedition to go into the former Republic of Yugoslavia during that breakup in 1991 and 1992. And we sent down this massive infantry company. I think the guy who retired as Lieutenant General Peter Devlin was the company commander, and John Barnes was part of that company. They drove down through the former Yugoslavia, through Croatia, got through Bosnia, pushing through all the way, not taking no for an answer, got into Sarajevo. The city had been surrounded by the Serbs, and the folks in there already were going through the deprivations of hunger and, of course, lack of medical assistance and being shelled and shot at each and every day. And that company, with Peter Devlin's leadership, with John Barnes as one of the NCOs in it, pushed their way through and opened up the city of Sarajevo to the outside world for the first time in some months, and started to help alleviate some of that stress that had been carried on. That company was awarded the Canadian Forces Subunit Commendation. Didn't get it till 4 years later. I had the great privilege in 1996 as brigade commander, and I think John was there forming up to 60 folks who were still serving in the company, in the battalion in Petawawa, in front of the entire brigade, and just going around and shaking the hand of each one of them and formally presenting that Canadian Forces Subunit commendation to their company for that heroic action going into Sarajevo. So no stranger to combat operations, no stranger to war, and no stranger to the requirements of leadership when people are afraid and people are dying around you, and knowing what he had to do. That was John Barnes in the 3rd Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment on that push into Sarajevo. Back to Canada, into headquarters in Zigno Squadron in Petawawa as the training warrant officer there. Back to the 1st Battalion. I know he had a rotation into Meaford at the Land Forces Central Area Training Center, training young soldiers to become Royals, training young reservists to become infantry soldiers and infantry NCOs. Back to the 1st Battalion in Petawawa this time, and ended up as the company sergeant major of Charles Company. Major Matt Sprague, another Canadian hero, was his company commander, and deployed into Afghanistan in the late summer of 2006 with that combat team based on C Company, 1st Battalion, Royal Canadian Regiment, again led by Matt Sprague. John Barnes was the company sergeant major. They deployed in, I believe, the operational handover to, at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Omer Lavoie, who was the commanding officer of the battle group, was the 14th of August. And the build-up to Operation Medusa, with the Taliban trying to retake Kandahar City, was already commenced. The momentum was building, and we knew we were going to be in for a tough fight. Right from the first days on the ground, John Barnes was in the thick of it, and it culminated, I think, for one period for him during that Labor Day weekend, when they were ordered to take back the White Schoolhouse area, to take out the Taliban around that and provide the footprint for further clearing of the area of the Taliban, removing the threat to Kandahar City. And as somebody said, if Kandahar City had fallen, Afghanistan would have fallen then, and therefore removing the threat to Afghanistan itself. During that fight, we had numerous losses, in part because of the kind of equipments that we had, in part because the enemy was so ferocious and intense there. And during the fight for the White Schoolhouse, we took a lot of casualties, both killed in action and wounded. But it was the morning, and I might not have this date right. I keep thinking in my mind, it was the morning of 3 September. I know Bruce Moncour was there, but so was the Sergeant Major, when an A-10 coming in to support them right at first light was coming from a distance of about 7 kilometers out, had already dropped a bomb on the White Schoolhouse. There was a flame burning there, but on the hills around Massamgar, the troops in Charles Company were burning some garbage, getting ready to go back into the fight as soon as first light was upon them. And as the A-10 was coming towards both those spots from a long distance away, the pilot lifted up his night vision goggles, lost his orientation for just a split second, and instead of focusing on the fire from the bomb that had been dropped on the White Schoolhouse, He focused on the fire lit by our troops near their vehicles. 0.9-second burst of the 30-millimeter cannon. And we ended up with some 40 of our soldiers wounded, including Bruce here on the podcast with us. And sadly, we ended up with Private Anthony Graham, an awesome young Canadian, an Olympic athlete, an incredible young man who was killed by that so-called friendly fire. John Barnes was wounded himself, went through a period of recovery and recuperation, feeling guilty about the entire time and the entire thing. Back in Kandahar Airfield itself, went back into the company because he wanted to be there for his leadership, because the company leadership had been stripped out by both the fight with the Taliban and the wounding from that friendly fire from the A-10 incident, and then came back to Canada as the escort officer for one of the bodies of his non-commissioned officers from the company. I saw John Barnes that day in Trenton when he got off the airplane and was there with the family, supporting them as they welcomed their dad and their father home for the very last time. And I realized just then just what an incredible leader he was. He went back into Afghanistan. He served the rest of the tour there till February of 2007. He was there when Chief Warrant Officer Bobby Giroux, the RSM of the regiment, of the battalion, was killed. And, losing a mentor, losing a friend, and losing a leader who he admired struck him hard yet again. And yet this guy soldiered on. Came back in February of 2007, did a variety of other tours after that, and finally culminated as he left the battalion, moved through appointments at National Defense Headquarters, and finally ended up retiring as the Chief Warrant Officer. I just want to make sure I'm open to get this right. Chief Warrant Officer of the Canadian Army unit for our wounded soldiers. And I'm just missing the name of it here right now. John Barnes retired after 36 years service. He received an investment into the Order of Military Merit. He received a Meritorious Service Medal. So let me read you the citation. Master Warrant Officer Barnes was deployed as Company Sergeant Major of Charles Company, 1st Battalion, the Royal Canadian Regiment, Battle Group in Afghanistan from August 2006 to February 2007. His exceptional leadership and composure under fire directly contributed to his company's success under the extreme adversity of intense combat operations and significant casualties. Severely injured during Operation Medusa, he insisted on returning to the front lines. Master Warrant Officer Barnes' unwavering sense of duty was instrumental to his company's cohesion and to their effectiveness during the mission itself. Not only would I say thank you and just to show my appreciation to John Barnes for his service, but we would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to his wife, Julie, who was beside him during his darkest hours and continues to support him in such an incredible way. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to turn your cameras back on, unmute yourself, and let's give a toast to Lieutenant Colonel retired Mark Douglas and thank him for his 36 years of service to the Canadian Forces in the Royal Canadian Air Force and his support of us who were deployed, amongst other things. And to Chief Warrant Officer RSM John Barnes, author, soldier, hero, awesome Canadian, and his wife Julie. To John Barnes and Mark Douglas.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
Cheers. Toast.
Lunch.
And so endeth this episode of Shots with Soldiers, unless there are any questions or any points that we want to make at this time.
Actually,
Well, General,
sir,
I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you. I wasn't expecting this, so it caught me by surprise. And I'm glad I had the camera off because I'm not typically a very emotional guy, but that hit home, I have to admit. I absolutely was not expecting anything like that. And so thank you very much for your kind words. I wrote that book and I wrote it not for my stories because it's all of our stories. And all those soldiers out there have their own stories just like that. And the only thing I will leave you with, sir, is that, you say during my darkest hours, I tried everything to find a light in my darkest hours. And the one thing that finally helped me was writing. And I was never an author. I was never a good writer. I just sat in front of my computer and I started typing and talking to myself about things that I was feeling. And that is my story that came out. So thank you very much. Thank you, Bruce, as well, obviously. And Phil, who's sitting there, the guy that published this for me. So thank you very much, General. I really appreciate your kind words.
John, you don't have to thank me or thank any of us. We thank you for your service. I'm glad you wrote the book. I'm glad what you just said about commending other veterans to write, if you will. And we don't tell our story as veterans nearly enough. Can I just say, when I was serving with the United States Army, God bless them, and I presided over many retirement ceremonies. I had that great privilege to retire non-commissioned officers and officers in the United States Army and be at their last ceremony and preside over it. And when I would chat to them at a little reception before the ceremony, which I always did, every single one of them, it seemed to me, and when I'd say, hey, so what are you going to do in retirement here from the military? And they often would list several things, but every single one of them said, well, you know, I really want to write a book. And I was thinking that was 20 some odd years ago. And I always kept thinking, well, you know, we don't do that in Canada, and we don't do it nearly enough. We've got it changed somewhat. I support what you said. I would commend every veteran, take the opportunity, write your story. If only for yourself, write it for your family. But just maybe in that greater family of veterans, in our veteran community, it would be powerful there also. Write your story. Thank you, John. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate the book. More importantly, we appreciate the service.
We want to encourage everyone to buy the book this Christmas season. Please pick up the book, White School Black Memories. Yes, right there, Mr. The Sergeant Major Barnes is holding up.
And you know, I remember doing a book signing. My first book came out, and it was probably just a couple weeks before this time. And exactly, what an awesome Christmas gift to give, right? And one of the guys in Trenton came up, and he, honest to goodness, he had a shopping cart full of books on either side. It was wonderful. He said, "Sir, you made Christmas so easy this year." and another friend brought a full case of books over here. I don't know, it was a case, 20 books, I think it was, and brought a case of books over and said the same thing. Hey, you made Christmas shopping so easy this year. So I would just offer to you John Barnes' book, White School, Black Memories. Be a great Christmas gift to give, make your shopping so easy, right? And here we are on the 15th of December. You don't have much time left to do it. Anything else in points or questions? I apologize for my swearing a little bit on this one. I was just angered when I heard.
I could jump in and say I'm not a veteran, but I am a writer, and I've read the book, and the book is terrific.
It is.
It's very honest. It's almost shockingly honest. It's a terrific book, and my congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. If you invite a command sergeant major to your party, you better expect him to speak.
You go ahead, Bart. We're delighted to have you.
I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm going to follow up something that you teed up for me here by speaking of your time in service with the United States Army and some of those retirement ceremonies, being retired Army myself. And I'm going to do a shot. This probably didn't happen on your show a lot, but again, you invite me, expect the unexpected. I feel it's very appropriate, and I'll make it as brief as I can, because I think in the result of what ends up happening here, that these soldiers and these families have a piece of Canada with them. So when you invited me, it just happened to be at this same time period, the week of the, what year, 37th, I believe, 36th anniversary, I believe, of this horrific tragedy. So on December 12th, 1985, 101st Airborne Screaming Eagle soldiers were returning from a peacekeeping mission in the Sinai Desert. The Army had routinely supported these missions, and it was the 2nd Brigade, 101st time, to complete this mission. They were on their way home from there. They had a stop in Gander, Newfoundland, to refuel and everything. And again, this time of year, December 12th, they refueled and everything, got back on the plane, took off, and the plane crashed, killing almost 250 soldiers, as well as the crew, which included about 8 other civilians that was on the plane. The report revealed that it was due to the ice on the wings and that it didn't properly de-ice. Now we're talking 1985, or if you're flying now, and especially if you're the first plane leaving out today, that they make sure that the wings and everything is de-iced and they don't take off. Another report, a jihadist terrorist group took responsibility for it as well, but there was nothing to really substantiate that. So you can imagine that this time of year of Christmas and the holidays and 6 months being away from their families, all these soldiers are perishing not to return to their families for the holidays. We know that these things are possible in combat, but not necessarily returning from a peacekeeping mission. So if you have something left in your glass, I'd like for you to give a shot to them. And like I said, for these soldiers who perished, as well as their families, I fully believe that they now have a piece of Canada in them that they'll never forget.
To our friends and allies who died in Gander, Newfoundland on 12 December 1985. God bless them.
Thank you.
And Bart, John and I are both from Newfoundland. There may be several others here. In Gander, Newfoundland, just outside at the end of the airport, right at the front end of the lake of Gander Lake, there's a little park called Silent Witness Memorial. And it's got the statues of several soldiers with little children by them, indicating the children that they were heading home to. The flight landed just before midnight. All the soldiers bailed out. The vast majority of them got on pay phones and phoned their families back in Kentucky and said, hey, we're on the way, another 6 to 8 hours and we'll be there, kind of thing. And of course, they did not make it. But the Silent Witness Memorial with the 101st Airborne Division's crest on it is one of those beautiful, most peaceful, tranquil, and sort of mesmerizing places you would ever want to go. Every time I get friends come from, particularly the United States, to visit us in Newfoundland, General Leon Laporte, who retired as a 4-star out of Korea, was the last guy that was with us. We take he and his wife Judy. We always go to the Silent Witness Memorial just outside of Gander, just to make sure they see that Newfoundlanders are remembering also what such a terrible tragedy this time of year. So thanks, Bart, for bringing it up, and thank you for offering a toast to those men and women who lost their lives in service to us. Thank you.
General, can I add a word about Gander?
Go right ahead.
I was a military first responder to that crash. I worked at the crash site doing the recovery along with many of my military police colleagues, but we also had what we called back then Base Defense Force.
Yeah.
And some of these folks on Base Defense Force, they'd never seen anything like this before, but they acted admirably, treated the remains with respect. I was one of the advocates for a stretch of Trans-Canada, now renamed Remembrance Way, which runs right by the crash site. And one thing about the families from the 101st is that we're trying to organize a group of them to come up to Gander for the 40th anniversary of the crash, which will be in 2025. And I'm also a lifetime member of the 101st Airborne now at the request of the families.
Hey, Bob, thank you for sharing that. You see, here's why veterans need to tell their stories.
And
Right.
can I add one
Just
thing
right
about
there.
Mr. Barnes?
Go
Hey,
ahead.
Rob.
So Mr. Barnes, as many of us here tonight may not realize, but I don't forget, I'm a retired MP veteran, and Mr. Barnes at one time was our military police group chief warrant officer. And we all like to think of admirable men like John, who the troops love. I can tell you right now, when John took over that position as MP group chief, he took over a toxic mess. He cleaned it up, and the troops, the MP troops, never forgot him for it. So bravo, John.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thank you for that. Sure. Anything else? Any other points? Conversation? Well, thank you, folks.
Actually,
Appreciate you being here.
sir, if I can say one more thing is, I watched the rocket that hit John, and and it killed Frank and Will
Yeah.
Cushley. And I honestly I don't know how he survived, but I'm glad he did. And I remember watching him getting on the helicopter and thinking that his war was over. And the fact that he stayed and did the entire tour is incredible. It's absolutely amazing, sir, that you did that. So thank you, sir, for your leadership. You were the best sergeant major I ever had. One of the best, at least top 5. But you're
You only had
Okay, the
4,
numbers are
John.
going down.
top 5. But you're incredible, sir. And I honestly, it was an honor to serve under you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce.
And just as one of the civvies in the circle here, gentlemen and ladies, I genuinely, every day, am grateful for your service, past and present. Truly, thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Gabby. Also, General, can I have a minute of your time just to explain some advocacy that's going on inside of the government of Canada at the moment that's very relevant to Afghanistan veterans?
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Sammy, Kevin Sampson. I go by Sammy. I'm a veteran of Afghanistan, Iran, Rwanda, Haiti, Bosnia, Central Africa, Italy. I'm currently advocating in government with Brian Mulroney, the ambassador of Kuwait, the Legion, and the War Museum supporting us. Our advocacy is with regards to a policy reclassification of the Gulf War to an actual war in Canadian policy. We've written a very successful e-petition. We've managed to convince the Conservative Party of Canada and Aaron O'Toole that what they were being told by government was inaccurate, and that there is another veteran classification within the government of Canada which applies to wartime service. So they've been very successful to date. I've been called in to brief back in D&D. As you can imagine, there's a great deal of opposition to this because it automatically entitles people to the Pension Act. So we've been very successful, and I feel that the government of Canada, after a number of meetings with Minister of Veterans Affairs, and I believe his name's Bill White, inside of D&D, I believe he's a DCDS, but we've briefed all of them, and I feel that a decision is about to come and that they might just quietly do this, given the fact that most of you have probably never heard of this. So what I'm looking for is some representation from the Afghanistan veterans who also should be classified as a war and have these benefits and these different these levels of insurance available to them. So what I was kind of hoping is that, there could be some kind of quorum that would be formed as a result of Afghanistan veterans who might want to explore this for our injured soldiers. I briefed the ACFA committee on this in Parliament. It's an increase of 150% a month in tax-free monthly benefits for soldiers, and that it's still being used obviously by other wartime service veterans from Korea, and far less today, World War II veterans. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, sir, and also just remind you, I briefed you before in NDCC2 when I was a geotech back in the day when you were sitting next to Matt McDonald, who's my personal hero. But I was the first guy that came in and did a geospatial demonstration in 3 dimensions as we followed through the Iraq War. So I just wanted to remind you of that. And I also
actually, Sammy, I do remember that. You look slightly different from what you did then.
Yeah. This is a little bit more serious, but I used to try to make my presentations very Don Cherry style, but I wanted to bring that to your attention, sir. It's taken a lot of hard work to convince a lot of important people that this policy is available to veterans, and that it's just being denied by government as a result of policy because they don't want to pay the insurance premiums.
Sammy, thank you. And look, let's continue that conversation. Maybe I could ask Bruce to be the lead on that with you for sure. And so thank you, Sammy. Thank you for the work. Thank you for the advocacy. Thanks for being here tonight, but thanks for your service, more importantly. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to put this up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, every other sort of place we can find a spot to put it. Share it, like it, share it, like it, share it, like it. Get all your friends, even if you only have 1 or 2, to like and share it. That's like me. And thanks very much for being out here, and Merry Christmas to all. And look, I hope you have a great 2023. I'm heading off south with my family soon. In the next days here, presupposing we don't get hammered with a blizzard here in Ottawa that delays me leaving. And life is very good. And I'll continue to be back in Canada, supporting all of the things we want to do for our veterans and for our country as we go forward here. And many of you perhaps know that I also support Ukraine in a way, every way I can, quite frankly. But I also worked with the Ukrainian World Congress, and I formed the Strategic Advisory Council. Dave Petraeus is a member of that. General Wes Clark retired as a member of that, and an Australian Major General, a Dutch Major General, myself, and we'll have more to try and advocate for Ukraine, raise money for Ukraine, and help them win the war and kick a brutal enemy out of their own country. And when you've seen them now, just think about it, a city like the size of Ottawa, a city the size of Toronto, 70 cruise missiles launched at it in one day. And yeah, they shot down 59 or 60 or 70. But that meant that 10 cruise missiles struck in the middle of a city in one day. Just think about that for a second. So there are countries around the world, Ukraine specifically, who are getting hammered every single day. And our shoulder is behind them, I believe, from Canada's, from NATO's perspective, but mine personally in a very real way. So my thoughts and prayers are with them. Merry Christmas to you. Happy 2023. Thanks for being here this evening. And thank you for your service to our great nation.